Senator Chris Coons of Delaware is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Obviously, it's a different House than yours, but obviously, should this go through, you will be part of this process in the Senate. Are you glad to see the announcement there's going to be some sort of formal codification of this process over on the House side?
Well, Chris, I do think it's a positive step forward for there to be a vote in the House that lays out specifically how they're moving forward with public testimony. But even more than the process, I'm interested in the substance. As the two folks who were just on with you were laying out, it's going to get harder and harder for defenders of the president to explain why they're defending him, as the details of what I think are the underlying motivations behind that call President Trump memorably had with President Zelensky of Ukraine come out. As a lawyer, one of the things that is a common saying is, if the law is on your side, argue the law. If the law isn't on your side, argue the facts. If the facts aren't on your side, pound the table. And what I thought we saw last week with that very awkward incident where a group of House Republicans sort of stormed the skiff was pounding the table, because they're gravely concerned that neither the facts nor the law are on their side. And as the House moves towards public hearings, this space will get even tighter and more uncomfortable for my colleagues.
Yeah, do you think ultimately, because I think, again, we have the call notes. I mean, this is not, we're not, we know what happened, more or less. The question comes to me about whether your colleagues move to the position that it is not just defensible, perfect, in the president's words, to essentially extort a foreign leader for the personal political gain against an American citizen and opponent to meddle in an American election, and whether you see them being able to look at themselves and make that argument.
Well, as you know, I've worked hard to develop some meaningful friendships with my Republican colleagues in order to be able to legislate on a wide range of issues. This is the first time in my 9 years here that no one is talking about this. We are having no meaningful conversations about what's the path forward, about the president's conduct with regard to Ukraine. When I've tried to open conversations about this, my friends change the subject. And I think that's because many of them know that his conduct was inappropriate. The position that I think Senator Portman, if I'm not mistaken, took publicly, which is this is wrong but not impeachable, is, I think, the position many of them would prefer to be able to come to. But as you said earlier, Chris, when President Trump himself says, don't defend me on process, defend me on the facts, if they are true to our basic values, which is that we shouldn't have a president misusing his office for personal political advantage, that'll be a very difficult place for many of them to land.
I want to ask you about something you said earlier today. We played that clip of the president being booed at the Nationals baseball stadium. You talked about you weren't a big fan of it. You think the office of the presidency deserves respect. And I guess my question is this. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that the test of a free society in some cases is whether you can lustily boo the head of state at a big public stadium, right? I mean, that exactly is the thing that we almost kind of fought a revolution over, so that you could do that.
Well, Chris, to be clear, I think if folks want to express their displeasure, their disapproval of the president, of course, that's a constitutionally protected free speech right. And as you just said, that was sort of one of the foundations of our society. I do a lot of work here in Congress and around the world advocating for human rights. And one of those most fundamental rights is the right of free speech. What I thought I was speaking to this morning was when I heard chants of lock him up, I had a visceral negative reaction to that, because when then candidate Donald Trump started leading chants of lock her up, that struck me as just wildly inappropriate for candidate Trump to be threatening to lock up his political opponent. I frankly don't think those of us who are opposed to President Trump's actions and values should mirror his behavior and lead chants of lock him up at Democratic rallies.
It's a fair enough point. I would argue it was satire. the phrase didn't come out of nowhere, but I hear where you're coming from. Senator Chris Coons, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Next, what the death of ISIS leader al-Baghdadi